Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more entitled people stories. In this video, a crazy teacher claimed my kids' allergies are fake and poisoned my child in school. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The first story starts like this. As a parent, the safest place outside of home you would think was school. That was at least what I thought once my daughter was old enough and went to one. One thing that made me extremely nervous was the fact that it was discovered very early that my daughter had a wheat allergy. Something I wanted to test due to the fact that I have the exact same one. When I sent her to preschool, I alerted everybody and made sure it was clear that she was not to be given food at school. She could only eat what I packed and sent her in with. It went fine, and then it was time to send her to kindergarten. We were trying to kind of teach her that if anybody offered her food to say no. She was pretty good at it, but being only 5 years old, I made it clear to this school and the teacher to keep an eye on her and make sure she didn't eat anything that I didn't put in her bag. At first glance and short meeting before school started, her teacher seemed fine. Nothing like a Karen, which is what I'll be calling her for the remainder of the story. 2 months into the school year, I got a call from the office telling me that my daughter was being rushed to the hospital. I was of course getting to her first and asking questions later, and basically she was having a severe allergic reaction. Lips turning blue, throat closing up, the whole deal. I spoke to the doctors and even the paramedics that brought her in to try and figure out what caused this. I assumed it was some other allergen that we didn't know about, and then they told me that when the ambulance came they found her holding a cupcake she took a bite of. I did not pack her a cupcake that day. They got to her in time, and after a couple of days of observation she was actually alright. I waited until after the crisis to start asking questions and getting to the bottom of things. I did not think asking my daughter would give me many answers, but she actually had the big answer that caused the entire mystery to be solved without any detective work on my part. So basically, a classmate had a birthday and brought in cupcakes. The teacher passed him out and told my daughter that mommy said it was okay. So she believed her teacher that I said it was fine to have and ate it. I was livid as I had spoken to the teacher beforehand and she knew about the allergies and not to give her anything. I assumed another child shared the snack and she just forgot, but the fact that her teacher intentionally gave it to her had me furious. I called the principal of the school and demanded a meeting with both him and the teacher present. The next day I was at the school sitting in the office with the two of them. I want to know why my daughter was handed a cupcake and told that you said I gave her permission to eat it, knowing that she had a wheat allergy and was not to be given anything. Karen teacher, the other child brought in treats for the class. Not taking one would be rude. Plus, it's wrong to not let a kid have a treat. She went directly against my request as the parent. Are you telling me this is alright? Principal, no it's not. Karen, you know that we have protocols to follow when it comes to allergens. Karen, everybody knows that these allergies are just fake. First it was to get peanuts out of schools because parents believe the media. And well, now that since gluten-free is a trend, everybody wants to pretend like their kids cannot have it. The girl deserved a normal life and to enjoy the things the other kids had. She could have died. You saw what happened to her and you are still sitting here defending what you did. Karen, I had no way of knowing that she would react that way. Because she shouldn't have been given anything. How can you watch people's children and let this happen? And also be so deluded and uneducated to think that allergies are fake. Principal, can you step outside for a moment? I need to have a word with Karen about her employment. I could tell that he was furious, but keeping his composure. Meanwhile, I was a mess and his secretary had to get me a cup of water just so I could calm myself down. My daughter nearly died and was now scared and upset with what happened. After a few minutes, Karen stormed out of the office, flipped me the bird, and walked out. I was informed that she was fired, and if I chose to allow my child back in school, he would make sure the new teacher understood my daughter's allergies. I agreed to give another teacher a chance with the promise of the principal he would be checking in himself. I was not done with Karen though, because what she did was not just worthy of losing her job, she had intentionally fed my child a known allergen. That is a crime, and I filed a police report against her to make sure that she got arrested for it. A smart person would have realized that they were in some serious trouble, but not Karen. She was convinced that her excuse of allergies being made up was going to hold up in court. The thing is that when you're an adult in a position of power, and your victim is only 5 years old, you're going to have some problems. I had documents showing the school was aware of the allergies plus the hospital records and documents. Which, in case you were wondering, yes, I was also suing her in order to get the medical bills that insurance didn't fully cover paid for. Which, by the way, was easy after she was done making a fool of herself. They asked her flat out if she fed my daughter something that she knew she was allergic to, only of course to then once again start that I was a bad parent for not letting my child have a cupcake, that I was making up allergies in order to be trendy. Which, by the way, finally, her dumb comment of why my daughter had a reaction finally came out of her mouth. Because she was asked how she could believe that she wasn't allergic if she had the reaction, and Karen said, "She reacted like that because she had been deprived for so long. It was just her body adjusting to the food. She would have eventually relaxed and been fine on her own." Yeah, she was claiming to know more than doctors and science. The fact that she was able to get enough education to be allowed to teach children kind of scares me. Idiots and crazy people sneaking through the cracks of society will always worry me. Finally though, she was found guilty of child endangerment and getting a short prison sentence and then probation. Meanwhile, of course, her teaching license got yanked and she was not going to be able to get that back. Plus she had to write us a nice check in order to cover the expenses she caused. I'm glad that my daughter seems to be bouncing back from the whole thing. The further in the past it is, the more she seems to forget it. I was also met with a new teacher before she went back, who was a wonderful woman who told me that she had a son with food allergies too, so she understood. It is almost the end of the year and no more incidents so far, so I'm hoping it was a one-off crazy teacher, and as my daughter gets older, she will be able to know more about her allergies and what foods to avoid. And the next one is a teacher malicious compliance story. I was in my last year of high school, year 12 in Australia, and back when I was doing school it was very important that you physically attend class. Back then I also happened to have severe major depression and a sister who was not good at getting organized and ready to leave on time. We had a teacher at my school who I had always despised. He did not encourage independent thought and spent our 70 minutes periods writing on the board for us to copy down. Just cycling back and erasing and writing continuously, no questions allowed until the last 10 minutes. He was also notorious for not listening to students and had an unspoken rule that he would lock students out of the class for 5 to 10 minutes further when they were late. Let's call him Mr. Richard for obvious reasons. Well, one morning I was 5 minutes late to his class, first period 8:45 AM, due to my sister throwing a tantrum. I knocked on the door and, "Mr. Richard, was the bus late?" Apparently his only valid excuse for running late to class. Me, no, but "Mr. Richard, you cannot come in," shuts door in my face. Well, after bursting into tears, I decided that his unspoken rule of being left outside the classroom for 5 minutes when one attended late never actually stated that one was required to wait outside the door to enter the room when he deemed to let the student in. So I wandered off to the library to find something interesting to read. Apparently, after he opened the door and found me missing, the school had to call my parents and explain that they had misplaced me and why. I was eventually found, and Mr. Richard had the nerve to ask in front of my parents and the principal why I, A, had not told him the reason I was late, because you didn't let me say so, and B, why I did not wait outside the door. Well, because you didn't say so, and I was not gonna waste valuable learning time that my parents pay for standing and staring at a door. My parents basically ripped them a new one, and Mr. Richard did not lock anyone out of his classroom for at least the next 7 years. So my younger brother tells me. It gave me great pleasure to get one up on such a hard-headed, infuriating teacher. And the next one is another teacher malicious compliance story. And by the way, if you've ever had to deal with awful teachers, I would love to hear your story either in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit, where you can post longer stories and I'll be happy to read them in a video. 3 years ago, I started working in a company where my managers were a piece of crap that would insult us and blame any problems on the employees, trying to get them against each other. I got burnt out after about a year of 10-hour days and weekends and of doing tasks that were greatly above my paycheck and completely different from what I was promised as I got there. So then I gave my resignations. My manager thought I was useless, as he often said about anyone but himself, so instead of trying to find a new employee, he decided that he would have taken over my role, to the horror of all my coworkers. The only problem, I was the only person who knew perfectly the company ERP program, and I would have had to teach him my 1.5-year experience in 2 weeks. As I started to teach him, he got more and more frustrated and terrified by the amount of workload that was coming his way and started to insult me even more, but I was still trying to teach him the best I could for the sake of my coworkers. And well, all of this until the first day of my last week. I was pointing out a mistake he was making every time he did a certain task, and he replied screaming at me, "Shut the hell up. I don't need you to act as a damn teacher." So, my malicious compliance, I didn't. I just sat beside him for the next and last 5 days, not teaching him anything, and every time he could not remember how to do something, I would jokingly cheer him up, telling him I was sure he could come up with the solution himself if he focused enough. When problems would come up that I still didn't have the time to solve, I would tell him, "I don't know how this thing happened. It never happened to me. You should contact the client service. They taught me everything when I need it." The peak of this was when he got so frustrated that he started to repeatedly slam his mouse against the desk and then sat there staring blankly at the screen for 10 minutes. I had to actually keep myself from laughing in his face. After I left, I spent the next 2 months getting called almost daily by my ex-colleagues to help them find files or solve problems that they could not find an answer for and that I did not have the time to teach them as I had to stay with the manager all the time. And the next one is titled, Getting Revenge on a Teacher. So background, I'm currently in high school and we have Zoom meetings in almost every class every day for online school. And I suppose this story took place during the pandemic. Anyway, I dislike it, especially having to have our cameras on. I get super self-conscious that anyone in my class could be looking at me and I wouldn't know. A user in the comments pointed out that it could be paranoia, which I think it is. Being paranoid is the best way to describe the feeling. So anyway, my English teacher, who we will call Miss Stevens, is super extroverted and loves to see her students. This is all fine and dandy, but she obsesses over it. She yells at kids all the time for not having their cameras on, as she wants to see that you are participating in class. I personally don't think students should have to invite their class into their personal life for a grade. After a while, she got fed up with people ignoring her demands, so she started docking points for the day's assignment if you did not have your camera on. I joined a meeting recently without my camera on as per usual, and I began working on the assignment. She stayed completely silent about my camera for some reason, which I loved for that class, so I could work in peace. Later that evening, I get a notification on my phone that I got a 75% on today's assignment, which was terrible for me because it took my grade in her class down to a B and I lost my 4.0 GPA. I emailed Miss Stevens and asked if it was a mistake or anything, and she said something along the lines of, "I need to see you participating in the class, and because I couldn't, I felt it was necessary to deduct 25% from your grade." I don't have the email right in front of me at the moment. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable turning my camera on, which I feel is totally reasonable. She gave me a hard no and said, "Nobody's watching you in class. They are watching me because I'm the teacher. You will get used to it eventually." I was pissed. All I wanted is a little bit of privacy. Sure, not all the kids stare, but we all have moments where we get lost staring. I decided I would turn my camera on, but I wanted her to regret it. So I downloaded a super glitchy, flashy, bright and disgusting glitch effect that I could put over my camera using a plugin for OBS that I found online. It lets you use OBS as your camera, so I could add whatever I wanted. The next day, I show up for the meeting and turn my camera on. A few minutes into the lesson, I turn on the glitch effect and lower the frame rate of my camera to make it look like I was just lagging. Miss Stevens asked what was happening, so I replied that I think my Wi-Fi is being slow or something. She moved on the lesson, but you could tell that she was starting to get annoyed by this constant flashing on her screen while she was talking. There isn't enough kids in the class for her to simply put me on another page, and I don't think she knows how to turn my camera off herself. I began to enjoy seeing her reaction, so after I finished my assignment, I started messing around with it a little. I started flashing random things on my camera, like pictures of Shrek, memes, whatever came to my mind pretty much. She pulled me aside after class, keep in mind my camera still had the glitch effect going, and she lectured me on having my camera on like that was distracting me, even though I finished my assignment after only 15 minutes or so. I just said, "You wanted me to turn my camera on, so I did. You never told me what I had to have on my camera." She kind of rolled her eyes a little and just gave in. I don't have to have my camera on in that class anymore, and she also apparently emailed my parents about me being distracting, and when I showed the plugin to my parents, they found it hilarious and didn't care all that much. I was not distracting any of the other students and I was already done. No problems here. Edit, a lot of people in the comments are asking if my grade got fixed and if I contacted the principal. Both of these things happened and I'm sure my teacher got a talking to from the principal. My grade is fixed and I'm back to having all A's. And here, ripe stars, I gotta say, maybe some of you remember that I was actually a teacher in the past, and I have to say, I do have a lot of empathy for both actually students and teachers during the pandemic, because that was certainly not an easy period. I mean, personally, if I would have been a student in that period, I probably would have enjoyed just staying at home and playing more video games than usual, but I understand that a lot of kids suffered from not being able to go to school. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Saying that I have a rocky relationship with my mother would be both an understatement and also overly simplified. She has been an entitled narcissist my entire life, and I cannot think of a single good memory I have of her. Not even just regarding me, but seeing how she acts with other people as well. Growing up with her was 18 years of psychological abuse. I don't want to go into too many details, but from a young age everything was my fault, and trying to talk to her about it resulted in gaslighting me to the point that even I hated myself. Once I was a teenager and broke out of those thoughts, I knew that at 18 I was gonna leave and never come back. I did exactly that, and I tried to be around her as little as possible. Then one day out of the blue I got a message from her over text. My mom said, "I just spoke to the doctors and they said I need a new liver." Me, "I'm sorry to hear that." My mom, "And I found some old medical records and you're probably a match for me. What day is good for you to come in?" Me, "What?" My mom, "The doctors need to test you to be sure before they do the surgery." Me, "I'm not giving you my liver." My mom, "They don't take the whole thing, just a piece of it and it will grow back eventually. Don't be so selfish. I took care of you for 18 years and all I get in return is you leaving and barely talking to me. You have to give me some of your liver because you owe it to me." Me, "I don't owe you anything. If you think that you took care of me instead of abusing me, it makes me wonder how drunk you really were all those years." My mom, "Here we go again with your stories." I stopped messaging her back because I knew that it was bad for me to keep going. I could not say that I was surprised at my mom needing a liver transplant. She drank heavily and sooner or later that was gonna catch up and make her sick. There was no way I was gonna have a surgery and give the woman who ruined my childhood half of my liver. The fact that she also just texted it and decided that it was a done deal without even asking me if I was okay with it, clearly nothing had changed with her from me leaving 2 years ago. She was clearly not gonna look at her life and realize the mistakes, so I started thinking it might be a better idea to drop contact with my mom altogether. The only person in the family I still really wanted to talk to was my older brother, who also left when he was 18 but had a much better relationship with our mom. The text and calls kept coming in the next few days and ranged wildly in emotion. One day she would be talking about how much she loved me and wanting to live longer so that we could spend holidays together and she could see me have kids one day. The next one, it was her yelling at me for being selfish and saying that I had an obligation to give her my liver just because I was her child. I had looked into the surgery information on my own out of curiosity, and the more I looked, the more I was sure I didn't want to do it. Any type of surgery was dangerous, and living with half a liver meant that I had to be careful about some things. I don't drink at all, but seeing things like possible infection and needing to stay home from work to rest. If it was somebody like my brother that needed it, I might have considered actually doing it, but not for my narcissistic mother. So I had blocked her number and was getting updates on the situation from my brother as it unfolded. He took her to the doctor and she kept saying that I was gonna donate my liver and just was trying to find the right day to come in. My brother said right in front of the doctor that I had no plans to donate and my mother should look elsewhere. Despite blocking her number, I kept getting calls and texts and I would just try my best to ignore them. She knew where I lived but was not in shape to really drive over and talk to me in person, which I was thankful for. So instead, I started getting things in the mail about liver disease and how family donating a piece can help save so many lives. She was really trying to mess with my mind and guilt me into doing this thing. I was standing my ground about this though, and then I heard nothing for a week, and a few days later my brother called me. Brother, hey. Me, what's up? I haven't heard an update in a while. Brother, mom ended up convincing my aunt to donate some of her liver for the transplant. Me, so she had the surgery? Brother, yeah, but I want to warn you now that I don't think she plans on leaving you alone about it even after the fact. Me, I am shocked they even let her have one. She's just gonna drink again and ruin it before it can fully grow. Brother, probably. Anyway, after the surgery she woke up and started saying how you were gonna take care of everything because you were selfish. She told aunt that you were gonna give her money while she could couldn't work and pay for the medical bills and all that stuff. Me, there's no way I'm giving anybody money towards this thing. Honestly, I don't want to have any contact with her, and if she keeps finding ways to harass me, I'm gonna file for a restraining order. You might want to tell her that, and if she comes to my house, I can and will call the police on her. Brother, I just wanted to warn you. I was glad to get the warning because it did not take long for her to start messaging me about all of these things that he talked about. Since she was using fake numbers anyway, I decided to just start responding with generic things that might come from a robot answer. Like, the number you have texted is not valid and message could not be sent, try again later. When a call would come in, I would just send her right to voicemail and made the decision that I should have made from the start and deleted them without listening. The last thing I wanted in my new start at life was her trying to abuse and use me again. Then the day came when she showed up to my house and I called the police on her. She argued with the cops, saying that since she was my mother, she had the right to invade my space. She even said that I should be arrested because I refused to give her a part of my liver to save her life. That she was gonna die and I should be arrested for attempted murder. The police luckily could see that she was crazy and smelled the alcohol on her breath and got her off my property. I got a restraining order, and so far she hasn't been dumb enough to try and break it. It hurt to have things come to that, but it was the best thing for my mental health. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.